Hello everyone, it's good to be back. Been away for a while, had a lot going on. Things good and things maybe not so good, but God is good and God is sovereign. And I hope I can be doing this a little more regularly now that things are kind of back to normal. But what I wanted to do here was examine this really new Watchtower study edition. It's the March 15th, 2012. This probably was released a couple days ago, I think. But you can go to jw.org, I think, and you can download this and read it for yourself. But what I wanted to focus on was an article down on page 20. And this article is basically just reaffirming Jehovah's Witnesses, their belief in the two classes, the one class of 144,000 anointed Christians, and then the rest of Christianity, which they describe as the great crowd or other sheep. Those are biblical terms, but those are just terms that the Watchtower has taken out of context to support their own beliefs. But there's really not a whole lot new in this article. It's really just some of the same arguments you've heard many times if you're familiar with this two-class theology, of course. And if there's anything that you would like to see pointed out or discussed more on this article, maybe arguments that you're not so familiar with, please let me know, and I can make another video just explaining this. But there's mainly two aspects of this article that I wanted to really touch on. The first one is just kind of in passing, but I'll just read this paragraph 2 and just touch on a few aspects, and then I'll get to the main point I want to discuss for this video. I'll just read paragraph 2. Christians living at this time of the end focus their attention on one of two hopes. The remaining members of the little flock of anointed Christians have the hope of immortal life in heaven as kings and priests with Christ in his kingdom. The far more numerous great crowd of other sheep share the hope of the living forever on a paradise earth as subjects of the Messianic kingdom. So let's stop right there. They say that the great crowd of other sheep share the hope of living forever on a paradise earth, but what they're saying is that these are far more numerous. They're far more numerous than who? Well, they're far more numerous than the little flock. So you can see how they come up with this. You take Luke 12:32, talks about a little flock, and then you have a great crowd mentioned in Revelation 7, which no man can number. So don't worry about context or anything. Well, there you go. You get two classes of one small group and one large group. But this doesn't work for so many reasons that I can't even begin to mention. But what I want to focus on, just in passing until I get to the main point, is that they're described as far more numerous. So just keep that in mind real quick. And some of you may have heard this argument before, but there may be some who haven't. But I think it's a very useful point to bring up to Jehovah's Witnesses. So go to Hosea chapter 1 and go to verse 10. And I don't know any way around this, but just to consider this. This is talking about the sons of the living God, the children of God. Now the Watchtower interprets this as referring to the anointed class, the ones who are just described as the little flock, the ones who are small and numbered in comparison to the great crowd of the rest of Christianity. But just read this. Yet the number of the sons of Israel will be like the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. And these are called the sons of the living God. Cannot be measured or numbered. Does that sound like a small group? Well, I don't think so, but just in case there's any doubt here, as to whether, maybe that's just talking about Old Covenant Israel, and that's a type and shadow of New Covenant. Well, let's go to what Paul says, and Paul is bringing all of this together in a New Covenant context. So there's really no way around this. But just consider this in Galatians chapter 4, verse 27. Rejoice, barren woman who does not bear. Break forth and shout, you who are not in labor. For far more numerous are the children of the desolate than the one who has a husband. Who are the ones who have a husband? Well, if you go back from where this is being quoted from, but regardless, I mean, this chapter really breaks it down and explains who those are. So Paul really interprets the Old Testament or the Hebrew Scriptures for us. But the one who has a husband are a natural Israel, those of the Old Covenant. But the children of the desolate, well, the Watchtower interprets these as the anointed class, the little flock, the small group. These are the children of the promise, the sons of God. But Paul says, he's quoting from Isaiah, but Isaiah says these are far more numerous. The children of the desolate are far more numerous than natural Israel. So just going back to this Watchtower article, this really just doesn't make any sense unless you just want to chop it up and not take other texts into consideration, and not even take into consideration the very context in which these words are spoken in Revelation chapter 7 or John 10:16 or Luke 12:32. I mean, you only have to go to Galatians 4 or Hosea 1, but these just further reinforce the fact that the Watchtower is just flat out wrong here. But there's another comment here that I want to discuss really quick, again, before moving to the main point. I guess it's just a friendly reminder of who's really in charge and what your salvation depends on. The other sheep should never forget that their salvation depends on their active support of Christ's anointed brothers still on earth. So I guess no matter who you are, your salvation depends on your support of the anointed class, specifically the governing body, really, but that would really go for all the anointed. So that's really nothing new. This has been discussed before in Watchtower articles, but I just do find it interesting that everyone needs to be reminded who's really in charge here. But and this is also interesting because in my discussion with the Jehovah's Witness YouTuber named Let Us Reason 1234, which you can find that on my Apologetic Front YouTube channel. We had 2 discussions, but I really pressed him when we were discussing Matthew chapter 25, when he talked about those brothers as the second class of Christians who are distinguished from the sheep, who are also discussed in Matthew chapter 25. And I asked him, well, so that means that your salvation depends on your support or how you treat Christ's brothers? And he didn't sound too confident in his answer, and I don't even really think he gave a direct answer to that. In fact, I want to say he said no, that's not the case. But anyway, here's the Watchtower saying that, well, that is the case, and that's what happens when you. That's one of the implications when you want to read this 2-class theology into the text, especially something as clear as Matthew chapter 25, where the sheep are separated from the goats, and the sheep inherit the kingdom, and the goats are cast into judgment. So that's just, I thought that was pretty interesting. But what I really want to get to is page 22 in this article. And is it 22? Maybe it's, no, I'm sorry, it's page 23. Okay, here we are. Page 23 in the article. And this is, again, nothing new, but you don't really hear this discussed that often from Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, I've heard it before because I've just had a lot of interacting, but this is not a very common one that you'll maybe hear at the door if you're having a discussion. But They may bring it up, but I would actually recommend that you bring it up and really press them on it, because they've been very clear, and especially in this case, on what their interpretation is of this text. But let's just start at the beginning of this paragraph. The Apostle Paul wrote of the glorious hope of the Spirit-begotten sons of God as joint heirs of Christ. So again, this is talking about the anointed little flock, the small group of 144,000. Then he mentioned the wonderful hope that Jehovah holds out to the unlimited number of the other sheep. So there's that unlimited number again that we showed that's really just a inconsistent interpretation. But here they go in quoting Romans 8. But just pay very careful attention of where a reading into the text is performed, and that's what scholars call eisegesis. That's reading into the text instead of reading out of the text. The eager expectation of the human creation is waiting for the revealing of the sons of God, the anointed. For the creation was subjected to futility, not by its own will, but through him that subjected it, on the basis of hope that the creation itself also will be set free from enslavement to corruption and have the glorious freedom of the children of God. And that's Romans 8. Now first notice here, I don't know, and I guess I don't have... well, I can actually look this up right now, but notice they have to put this in brackets here, just because you just never get this from reading the text without a Watchtower lens. But I am pretty sure that this is not in the New World Translation here. I'd be really surprised. I'm kind of going off on a limb here to see if that's actually there, but I don't even know. I think that's Romans 8:19. Yeah, for the eager expectation of the creation is waiting. So yeah, that's not in the New World Translation, the brackets, which is interesting. But they put it here in this text because you would just have no idea that this is what Paul would be talking about if you didn't have these words in brackets. So that's just really interesting. They have to do this. Now, there's nothing wrong with offering a commentary on a text, but really to put these brackets in like this, especially when there's just absolutely no justification in the context, I think that just really clearly shows the motive behind the Watchtower and how they can really do whatever they want to the Bible because, well, they're the ones who have been appointed directly by Christ Jesus. And so to question them is to question God. But I just want to show that just contextually, this really does not work. First of all, this is talking about the present tense. Creation, well, let's just go with the Watchtower's interpretation for a moment. The human creation, that's referring to the other sheep. That's just what they discussed here previously. So this is talking about the other sheep. So the other sheep are waiting. Human creation is waiting. Now, when was Romans 8 written? Well, it was written in the 1st century. Now, according to the Watchtower, there were no other sheep in the 1st century. Any Christians in the 1st century would have been of the anointed class of 144,000 who have a hope to live in heaven and rule and reign with Christ. So how could Paul talk about human creation in the present tense waiting, or the other sheep in present tense waiting? That really just doesn't make sense contextually. And so I think even if we stop there, we could show that this just flat out does not work. But let's just go on to another aspect of this text to show how we can have a strike two here against the Watchtower in their interpretation, just flat out not working. Now, the Watchtower wants to interpret the sons of God as being, or the children of God as being of the anointed class, a separate group of Christians, not those other sheep or the great crowd who are living today according to the Watchtower. But look at Romans 8:14. This tells us who those sons of God are that creation is waiting for, which verse 19 talks about and what we just discussed. It says that all who are being led by the Spirit, these are sons of God. So if you are led by the Spirit, then you are a son of God. There's no qualification here that would be only specific for one class of Christians. And that's interesting, and I think that's noteworthy, and I think that's detrimental to the Watchtower's position. Because, if this was just talking about a unique group, well, then why not bring up a qualification that would be unique to that group? And that's being led by the Spirit of God. So Paul here just directly refutes what the Watchtower is talking about. So all Christians are sons of God because all Christians are led by the Spirit of God. But let's find out what strike 3 is. It shows here that those who are the children of God, those are going to be the heirs with Christ. And that's in verse 17. So if you are a child of God, if you are led by the Spirit, then you are going to be an heir. You're going to be an heir of God and a fellow heir with Christ. And let's just go to one other text here, and maybe we'll go to 2 other texts in Galatians 3, and this gives us another qualification here. So in Romans 8, we just saw that these children are going to be heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ, who the Watchtower interprets as being those anointed Christians, that little flock. But Paul also in Galatians 3, and the consistency is so amazing here with the Apostle Paul, but he says, if you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's descendants, heirs according to promise. So if you belong to Christ, then you are that heir that Paul also talked about in Romans 8. But what does it mean to be an heir? Like, what's really going on there? Let's go to Romans chapter 4, and Paul is going to answer that for us. For the promise is to Abraham, or to his descendants, that he would be heir of the world. Well, who's this talking about? This is talking about Abraham and his descendants. Well, the Watchtower doesn't believe that Abraham is going to be an heir with Christ, part of that anointed class. None of the Old Covenant believers are. Only those who, followed John the Baptist and lived after him. Those are going to be the only ones up until the great crowd comes along in the past 2 centuries. But anyway, he tells us what it means to be an heir. That if you're Abraham or one of his descendants, or as Romans chapter 3, not chapter 3, but Galatians chapter 3 and Galatians chapter 4 talk about, if you're one of Abraham's descendants, then you're going to be an heir of the world. If you belong to Christ, then you are going to be an heir of the world. So we have 3 strikes here for the Watchtower in their interpretation of Romans chapter 8, that this just does not work. And so here's several reasons why this doesn't work, and what you can bring up to the Watchtower or to Jehovah's Witnesses that you may talk to at your door, or maybe if you have some friends who are Jehovah's Witnesses, just ask them these questions. You don't even really have to offer any interpretation, because as you could see, the Apostle Paul is more than adequate in interpreting these texts for us. So you can really just ask them to read these texts and explain to you what they mean, and just let the Spirit work into their in their mind, in their heart, to really to see the truth here. So I hope this has all been helpful to you. And again, if there's any other aspects in this article that you want to have discussed, and I'm sorry I didn't read the whole thing, it just would have taken probably too long for our purposes here. And this is stuff that I've gone over before in the past that I'm familiar with. But if you want to see something else discussed, just please feel free to let me know. So thanks again for watching, and I hope this has been helpful to you.